to the,
Well, okay.
there you go.
Are we live streaming to Facebook?
Crystal's got that. She told me earlier. So, Rachel, you want me to share the PowerPoint?
Yes, it was a delay, just to let you know, Sandy. This is Crystal. Sorry to interrupt, Rachel. It was a delay, Mary. So I don't know if it's doing it now, but I did. Cheryl was on. We were trying to do it, so it may be a little delay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it usually doesn't. It usually tell us up in the upper part of the screen that it's.
Yeah, it does. I don't know if it took.
I don't see that. That's why I was.
I do see it on mine. I see on mine that it's recording.
Yeah, it started on mine. I had to push a consent button.
Right, I know the recording is fine,
recorded.
but I was talking about, are we live streaming to Facebook?
Oh,
Oh,
And
okay.
I think it usually tells us that we're live streaming. I don't know.
I don't see it. You're right.
Didn't see it yet.
I don't see it. I don't think it took.
We can also always upload the recording to Facebook from the Zoom recording.
Yeah, I guess the concern is that there's people that are actually on Facebook that think they're gonna see this.
I'll post it. I'll post the link to the Zoom. So they'll know.
Okay, so I'm gonna just go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for being here. Today is show off what all of the people in the advocacy committee have been doing. We have an incredible number of people who work really, really hard observing entities at the local level to make sure they're following sunshine laws and see if there's anything that the league should be worried about. We have people who track bills through the state legislature and rally people to call their representatives, write their representatives. We also go in person to things. So you can see up on the screen here, we participated in the May 8th motorcade for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We've also been involved, league members have been involved in various lobby days at Jefferson City for generally in opposition to bills that have been going through. Next slide. You can see the lovely decorations from our own members here that were at the motorcade. This was a fantastic, I really liked the motorcade that happened because it was a really good coalition of different groups, which I think is a lot of what we're doing now is we're trying to work really hard to collaborate with other organizations and just kind of build people power, to steal a term from redistricting, in order to, make our impact broader. Okie dokie. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, never mind. You can stop sharing the slides now, Sandy. So we're gonna just hear really briefly from a bunch of different topics that we've been covering. So if you remember in January, we as a league voted for our 5 league priorities. And so we kind of did what we could to track those priorities in the Missouri legislature. And so we're just going to hear a brief update from a number of people on the topic. So you're going to hear from, I can't remember the number, like 8 people. There are so many more people who have been instrumental to all of our causes. And so just keep that in mind. But we're going to go ahead and start with redistricting. Mary Lindsay, if you can go first.
May I interrupt for just a moment, Rachel?
Yeah.
I would just ask that everyone who is not speaking would mute their microphones, and that way it doesn't interrupt the speaker, if you could do that. Thank you so much.
All right, go for it, Mary.
so are you waiting for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. The redistricting committee launched on March 25th. Not long after that, we released a recording of the song, People Power Makes Us Strong. It's now accessible through a YouTube link on both the KC League and the Missouri State League websites. Feel free to copy the link and share it widely. On May 4th, we hosted a successful presentation by Sean Nicholson of the Fair Maps Missouri Coalition. Our committee has supported communities of interest map making through Sean's openmapsmo.org. Along with 9 other leagues across Missouri, we're currently compiling a database of community influencers in our area, which should serve several purposes. Within the last week across the state, we've changed the name of our committee to the more upbeat Fair Redistricting Committee. That's true with, I don't think all the leagues have a committee, but all the local committees and the state committee are all now Fair Redistricting. And there is some late breaking news. Last week, a member of the St. Louis League, who is also a longtime member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, scheduled a joint meeting with AKA members and some of us on the state redistricting committee. Incidentally, Vice President Kamala Harris is an AKA herself. Anyway, we Zoomed together on Thursday evening, and by the end of the extended Zoom, all of us from both groups were very enthusiastic about the prospect of our organizations working together on redistricting. And it's because we all understand that people power makes us strong. This connection with the AKAs has occurred as we at last approach an Amendment 3 required step in the redistricting process. By July 29th, the governor must announce the members of the redistricting commissions. Finally, redistricting will be in the news, so maybe soon we'll be able to get a firmer and more substantial foothold on the 2021 redistricting process. The end.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. Mary has been so active. I think you guys all know, but Mary has been extremely active at the state level and at the local level, driving all of this. And the people-powered meetings were fantastic. I was very inspired. And I had never really wanted to draw my own district before, but I was tempted. All right, so next, we are going to hear from Janelle about campaign finance reform.
Me unmute here. So there have been several bills introduced that have to do with campaign finance in Missouri. Most did not make it to the governor's desk. There was one that was introduced by Jill Shoup, Eliminate Dark Money Act. It didn't make it any further than the initial reading. There is one bill, however, that is on the governor's desk, Senate Bill 86, and the act prohibits the contribution or expenditure of public funds by any school district or any officer, employee, or agent thereof to support or oppose the nomination of a candidate, passage of a ballot measure, or defeat of a ballot measure. So it really tries to keep school districts out of any ballot measures or speaking up for any initiatives that are coming across. So I just thought you would like to be aware of that. And now I'm going to do a really quick presentation. I'm going to try to share my screen. And can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, when we were talking about campaign finance reform, one of the interesting things that are coming through in many state legislators is a move to ranked choice voting. And so I just wanted to do a really brief presentation on it, as I'm really interested in maybe furthering this in Missouri. So ranked choice voting in Missouri. What is ranked choice voting? Many of you probably know what it is, but it's a voting system that allows voters to rank candidates in order of preference and then uses the rankings to elect candidates who best represent their constituents. So what's Missouri's current system? It is a most votes wins system. A candidate actually doesn't have to have a majority of votes. They just have to have the most votes of any other candidate. So why is this system not working? The reason why is a candidate can win without the majority of the votes of their constituents. So if a candidate can win with limited support, they are probably not best serving their constituents. So what does ranked choice voting do to fix this, or how does it provide a fix? Candidates present more issue-based campaigns. So the voters make choices. You can always vote for the person you like the most without worrying about electing the person you like the least. So there's no oh, I'm voting for the lesser of two evil elections. Under ranked choice voting, candidates will focus on the issues that affect their constituents to gain a majority of the support. Candidates are also more likely to present a positive campaign message to voters because they want to be your first or second choice. And so they do less negative campaigning. This takes a lot of dark money, perhaps, out of political campaigning, as they need to promote their message, what their platform is. Here's a quote by Abraham Lincoln: "The best way to predict the future is to create it." So how does ranked choice voting work? I'm going to just discuss a few more details about it. Choice. Voters rank as many candidates on the ballot as they want without fear that ranking other candidates underneath their first choice will hurt the chances of their favorite candidate. It reduces polarization. It promotes the majority support and creates incentives for candidates to reach out to a larger audience of voters rather than just one political party or one political side. And it saves money since the primary and general elections are consolidated. In all but a few cases, they're consolidated. It reduces the fiscal cost to vote. All right, and that is, I will stop sharing now.
Janelle, one thing I think it may do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't it help encourage more candidates to run?
Yes, it does. It encourages candidates to run on more ideology or candidates who perhaps align more with the majority of constituents in their district, if that makes sense. Because it's not like the Democratic or Republican parties are going to back me because I'm aligning with, their kind of more extreme views of either side. So it allows more centrist candidates to run that wouldn't necessarily receive backing from a party affiliation. And yes, so the answer is yes.
It's a real horse race.
It is. And a lot of states are starting to provide this as an option for voters. So I think St. Louis just started ranked choice voting in their municipal elections for aldermen and mayor. And I think we're seeing that extremist candidates then are not, they might be a very small sect of the population's first choice. So because of that, they don't get pushed to the top.
Others may know this, but I think St. Louis is called an approval voting system, and it may be slightly different. So don't mean to muddy the water, but theirs is, I think, a version of ranked choice, not strictly ranked choice.
Yeah, there are slight differences in how ranked choice voting works among areas that have implemented it. So anyway, it's just an interesting concept. I think here in Missouri, especially in statewide elections, it would be really interesting to see how ranked choice might provide some moderation.
Janelle, Benjamin Singer could certainly address our local league about this subject. He is a lead person with Show Me Integrity about ranked choice voting. So
Yeah.
might consider that.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much, Janelle. I love ranked choice voting. I think we should do it too. Okay, next up is Dolores and Sandy. If you could share that slideshow again from the paper we left off. There are 2 slides on education, and those are for Dolores.
Hi, we're ready to start? Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the people that were helping contact the legislatures. I mean, this was very important. There were 2 bills that were passed and have gone, and they're sitting on the governor's desk right now. The first one is HB 349. And it is the Missouri Empowerment Scholarship accounts, which are basically for private schools only, okay? And these are the principal part, the funding. Any taxpayer donation receives a state tax credits of 50%, and taxpayers cannot designate a specific student. Tax credits issued annually will be $50 million with a cap of 75 million. The management oversight is the state treasurer, educational assistance organization who apply will be first come, first serve, and then the EAO will select qualified students. The student qualifications, they must be public school students with approved individual educational plans, IEPs, or they have to meet a family income and reside in a city of at least 30,000 residents. Pupil transportation was an issue that was thrown in there as a, I guess you want to say, to the school districts to get this thing passed. And so that's where that is, that 40% of fully funded public transportation. And no scholarships from the Missouri Empowerment Scholarship accounts will be given if the funding falls below that threshold for public transportation. And lastly, as to get the school district's approval or to get this thing passed, those scholarship count students to private schools will be counted by the school districts for state aid. Now, there was a Senate Bill 86, which Janelle was speaking to. At the last minute, the Senate wanted to make some changes to House Bill 349. And so they attached this at the last minute to Senate Bill 86. And basically, this is the same thing with Missouri Empowerment Scholarship accounts, except that the state tax credits given to donors to the Missouri Empowerment accounts would be $25 million versus the $50 million in HB 349. And the other change is the first bill, HB 349, was going to give the state treasurer a lot of control how this was going to be developed with a board that would be distributing this money for the scholarships. So what happened with Senate Bill 86 is now they put more restrictions on the Missouri State Treasurer, who would be chairman of a Missouri Empowerment Scholarship Account Board, with board members who are commissioners of Missouri departments and 1 member each of appointed by the Speaker of the House, and then also the President Pro Tem of the Senate and the Governor. And also marketing and administrative expenses could be 4% rather than the 2% in HB 349. The second bill is HB 557 and HB 560, which also passed, and they're also on the governor's desk for signing. And it was the protection of children, the private religious exempt boarding schools for minors. And this bill added 16 new sections relating to the protection of children, and also covers private religious exempt boarding schools for minors with regulations to report information annually to the Department of Social Services, including background checks of employees and volunteers. I want to thank the leaguers who really were concerned about this and really did a lot of contact with our legislators. And that's it for us.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Dolores. I have learned so much about education just in the past few months being on that committee with you, or the state action committee with you, learning more about it. Okay, so next up is actually me. So Sandy, if you will go on to the slide that is Medicaid expansion. Beautiful. So as we all know, Amendment 2, which was to expand Medicaid in Missouri, passed back in August of last year. It passed 53 to 46. So that was almost 100,000 more votes in favor than opposed. The legislature then decided to not include funding for Medicaid expansion in the budget. They gave kind of various reasons for this. One of the ones that was a common soundbite was that it's the legislature's job to appropriate money, so they refuse to follow the orders of the citizens to appropriate money, despite the fact that it is a constitutional amendment now and the Constitution is directing them to do so. So the Governor Parson was initially putting down some groundwork for expansion, but he stopped doing that as soon as it was clear that the legislature would not include funding for Medicaid expansion, excuse me. And so what's happening now is that there is a lawsuit that has been filed on behalf of 3 Missourians who would have benefited from the expanded Medicaid. And so we're just waiting on the courts. We're waiting on the outcome of this lawsuit that would force Medicaid expansion on July 1st. So it's kind of a wait and see deal. This is also what has happened in at least one other state, I think Nebraska, where the citizens wanted to pass it and the legislature refused to expand it and it went to the courts. So stay tuned for more news on what's going to go on there.
Is this coming up in a special session or not?
Mhm.
It could. Do we know, is it?
Others may know. I thought I heard that, but I'm not sure.
But that piece of it is about the tax that they didn't pass to fund Medicaid from the hospitals and the nursing homes. So that's a whole different section than the expansion.
Got it.
But I do think there will be something that has to be done on Medicaid funding.
Yeah, we hope so. Okay, so next up we have Sandy, you can stop sharing the screen. Cheryl will come later. Next up is Riva, if Riva is here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I am head of the Social Justice Committee, which pretty much covers everything. So I looked at gun laws, of which there were several, and freedom of speech laws. There were 3 bills that were passed and are on the governor's desk. And the first one was actually one I wasn't looking at, but it was Senate Bill 53, which does disallow chokeholds. I mean, there's some good stuff about this bill. And then there's a Police Force Transparency Act where the law enforcement agencies have to collect information and report local data on use of force. So there were some good elements of this Senate Bill 53. Senate Bill 26 was also passed, and this had to do supposedly with public safety. It deals basically with lots and lots of criteria on how a police officer can be investigated if they are accused of an illegal behavior. And there's some restrictions, of course, that would not be allowed for a regular citizen. They're allowed to be informed of a lot of information prior to their trial, and they only get 90 days to investigate, the investigators, and it's not subject to disclosure of sunshine laws. Those are just a few of the things in this bill that are basically protecting the police officers, understandably, but at the same time, it sounds like there's some stringent measures on how investigators can do that. The other one that was really serious that was passed was HB 85 and 310. It goes to the governor's desk. This is about punishing elected officials or any officials who actually enforce federal laws in the state of Missouri regarding concealed carry and other gun laws. So they're basically saying that the federal laws are not allowed in this state. They cannot be enforced in the state of Missouri, such as they're invalid. These federal laws supposedly are invalid now in our state. So I don't even think that's legal, but I don't know. So those were the three that did pass. There were several that did not pass. Not that they won't. The Minuteman, I'm sure you all remember the creation of a Minuteman. Well, that didn't get very far. I think the last time they heard it was in February. So I guess that's good. There's lots of concealed carry, the guns everywhere. There are several bills that did not pass, but they were heard. There was floor action on them in May. So these are not going to go away. These are basically having a concealed carry anywhere you want to go. And actually, HB 944 allowed the age to be dropped to 18 to carry a concealed weapon. The other one was the right to bear, unlawful assemblies, which was unlawful traffic interference if you had an intention to impede vehicular traffic. Additionally, if a person blocks a public street, highway, or interstate as part of an unlawful assembly. And I'm not sure what they define as unlawful. A person convicted of rioting who damages property, that was another one. Let's see, where was the other one? But there were some where I think if it was 6 or more people, if there's 6 or more people, it could be a class A demeanor. But I guess the point is that I don't know what an unlawful assembly is at this point. I mean, it sounds like they're unlawful assemblies are just people standing around on a corner. So they're just trying to, this was Bill SB 80, that was SB 66, sorry. That did not pass. And the last time that it was heard was in February. So that may not go anywhere. So that's really the only thing those are the bills that I were looking at, mostly concealed carry and the one bill about the traffic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reba. All right, so next up we have Annette giving us an update on National Popular Vote Compact. Annette, are you here?
She is. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just going to go over this briefly from the national perspective. I think most people believe, and studies show, that who gets the most votes should be the winner. Most of us believe that Joe Biden won the presidency by 7 million votes, but in reality, he won the presidency by 45,000 votes in 3 random states, which flipped the winner-take-all electoral college votes to him, thus allowing him. So that's why you're seeing all these lawsuits in these various states. So those are the states by very small margins. He won. So with the winner take all, that just negates the Republican votes in that case, and he became the winner. So, you know, when you argue the case, well, he won by 7 million votes. He did not win by 7 million votes. And that is why it's being attacked, the whole election process. In 2004, John Kerry, basically the same thing happened. He lost by less than 60,000 votes in just one state, the state of Ohio, which is large, has, I think, 20 electoral college votes. And he, had he won that, he would have won the electoral college, but not the popular vote, but he would have been president. So to date, we have states in the compact, and what it is, what the national popular vote is, it's a compact. It does not replace the electoral college. It works with the electoral college. It is a group of states who have agreed to join the compact. You join by your state legislature, both houses, and the governor signs the bill. There's currently 15 states in the District of Columbia are in there, and that totals 195 electoral college votes, which when we get to 270, the compact will be enacted. And a state compact is not a new idea. It's states getting together, the interstate highway compact. When you drive in Kansas, even though you might have Missouri plates, you have to follow the laws in Kansas because that state and other states have agreed to that. The one I like the best is the lottery. You go buy your lottery ticket for the Mega Millions, and there's 20 states involved. Those states have agreed that they will pay money to the winner in Missouri, even though it's Wisconsin, Illinois, whatever. So that's the concept of the compact. All states do not have to belong. There's been some, so in Missouri, we have had several bills proposed over the last, since the early 2000s by both Republicans and Democrats. It's now sort of viewed as a partisan issue. So Republicans are refusing to put it in committee. So we've not had a hearing ever. Here's why I think Republicans should support it in all states. Because the winner of the state gets all the votes, which means the votes that have been cast on the other side are negated. If there's states like Texas, Florida, and Arizona, for example, their demographics are shifting. So those votes are getting closer and closer with occasionally, like in Florida, a Democrat winning. That negates all the votes for that Republican candidate. So therefore, what might have been a close race, and you could pick those votes up other places, you don't bother to try because all the candidates do is focus on the on those swing states. So what are we going to do? What we're going to do on our committee is we're going to do more public awareness and outreach to try to get the citizenry more engaged and interested in the idea. Florida, which is considering and working on it, and the league is very involved down there, they're doing a conference in a workshop in November and bringing Michael Steele, a prominent Republican, and the committee to Florida to try to engage people. It's a tough thing, and that's basically what we worked on, is just we had 3 bills that were introduced. None of them got to committee this year. So It was kind of frustrating, but I think we're going to take the new tack, and all of our information is on the website. So if you have any questions, you can text them and I'll answer them, or, you know, I can answer them now, but however you want to do it. So that's what we've been doing.
Great work.
Awesome. Yeah. I think it's exciting that we're getting closer and closer to that 270 number. That's
Yeah,
going
I
to be
mean-
exciting, even if it's not Missouri.
Right. And I honestly, there's 9 states that it's passed in at least one house. A couple states were added this year while we were working on it. So, I mean, and that has been the point I've made. It's going to happen. We'll either be a part of it, or we will, you know, our votes really won't count then, because the compact will decide. I mean, we can keep voting for the loser, or but it won't matter. The winner of the popular vote will win. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Annette.
Thank you.
Alrighty, moving on next to Cheryl, who's going to give us an update on what's going on with TIF projects. And I think there's the next slide in that slideshow, Sandy, is, yeah, you're on it.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Sandy. This is the CATS building proposed drawing of what it would look like, an illustration of what it would look like were it to be completed. This is a current TIF that's creating a lot of buzz at City Hall. And you'll be hearing a lot about that next week when this comes before the City Council. Developers are asking for tax dollars to do this. They thought that this is an urban renewal area along that area of Maine, which now should be changed, because with a streetcar line, that those properties get a lot more valuable. But the city is slow in making those changes, and the developer came in and is asking for millions of dollars in tax breaks. We of course oppose TIFs, lengthy TIFs, and we are concerned that any agreement should have, any TIF project should have a community benefits agreement. In 2018, the city gave away $175 million to developers. So now we have more high-end hotel rooms than we need, and we continue to build them, and we have more high-end apartments than we need, and we continue to build them, while we still have people who are unhoused, and the city says it has no money for low-income housing. So it's taken a couple of years, but the league has been among those who have fought TIF and tried to create awareness about what TIF is doing to our city budget and what it's doing to the agencies, schools, and libraries that rely on tax dollars. So I think that we can expect a lively city council meeting on Thursday. So just, you know, the league is in the news. The league is, through its studies, is helping shape changes. And Alice Kitchen co-chaired the TIF study, and Cindy Cart was on that, who was here, and some other members, many other members. We studied a lot of different kinds of issues with TIF, and it was just interesting to see that most of the nice buildings that we have downtown were built with our tax dollars, so we can be very proud of where our money has gone.
Question?
Sure.
Will the league be represented on Thursday?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Want to go?
I would say Cheryl has been tireless in engaging with the council and their representatives and aides and others at the city. She's not stopped, and it's we have a real good representative in her
Thank you. Thank Alice for her leadership
as well.
All right, awesome. So next, you can go on to the slide after the TIF one. So next, we're going to talk about voting rights, which is, I suppose, the reason we're all here with the league. And so we'll start with citizen initiative petition ballots with from Pat.
Good morning. This is Pat Bartholomew. I started meeting with a group of agencies and organizations early in the session to head off what they this group of people, including the league, saw as a very aggressive move to basically disband and do away with the concept of initiative petitions. This is a problem all over the country. They're clearly seeing this whole concept of citizen initiative petitions as basically overriding the will of the state legislature. And then, of course, we've pulled the wool over the citizens of the state. And this is kind of they have all kinds of buzzwords, one of which is protecting the vote, protecting the integrity of the concept of having the state legislature be in charge of passing what they see as very important issues. So they came up with, and the top part of this slide, you'll see these are the 4 bills that basically were put together and moved through the House and Senate, increasing the number of signatures. A lot of you know this already. The attempt was, the bill said that they wanted the number of signatures increased from 8% to 10%, and in 8 congressional districts as opposed to 6. So that, of course, is an incredible amount of signatures. I would estimate probably 600,000 signatures would be required. Number 2, it would, this House joint resolution with all the bill numbers would increase the threshold to pass either a constitutional amendment or a state statute from majority, just the majority, which we have currently, to a 66% approval, 2/3. So as we have said before, that would have meant that Medicaid expansion wouldn't have passed. It had a majority, it did not have 66% approval. So with much work, and I will say this group of people with a dedicated lobbyist basically put together, I think, enough action steps to let the people know that in the House and Senate that we were serious and we weren't going away. So this bill at the last minute did not pass. It was on the calendar, it had passed the House. These are a number of bills that were put together. This is just what, basically made it through the process. And it made it to the Senate, and the hearings were held in the Senate Election Committee on March 31st. It passed out of the committee, and it was voted do pass on April 14th, and it was put on the calendar. And so we were fairly convinced that this bill, with all the leadership in the Senate that was interested in making this happen, that there was no way they weren't going to get it passed. But it did not pass. It was not brought up for a vote. So this is a very significant win for the people who support the initiative petition bill, including the league. The fact that this bill didn't pass. Richard Von Glan, who's with the Jobs with Justice organization, has chaired this subcommittee. And Alice Kitchen, of course, has been on this committee as well. But he sent out a kind of a white paper this summer, and it was from a group I had never heard of, and maybe all of you educated people had heard of something called Opportunities Solution Project, I believe it's called, and it's based in Florida. It's a think tank, and it came across as, and I picked it up and started reading. I thought, oh, well, this is kind of a legitimate think tank. They're helping state legislatures carve out bills and this kind of thing. Well, it wasn't at all. And it's irony of ironies. This is a group that is based in Florida who basically, as of May 13th of this year, put together a white paper specifically for Missouri. It basically is saying, this state will continue to be held hostage by the radical leftists, and that's their language. And we will continue to see this attempt to pull the wool over the electorate, to the electorate, and see that they are being given an opportunity to vote on things that have vague language, that are not economically feasible. They are using, as an example, of course, Medicaid expansion. So this is we're going to see all this stuff again next year. I was kind of surprised that this bill did not pass, because they had worked tirelessly to get, the votes put together on this. I give a lot of the credit that people walked the halls and really tried to beat off the opposition, because the one saving grace is that some of the people who really were pushing this, and they were pushing some pretty amazing gun legislation, are termed out. So that's one good thing that's happened. But in terms of just the whole initiative petition concept, I think they are going to continue to try to make it almost virtually impossible for people to put together the committee, the funding, to get these petition bills, to get these concepts passed. So
Yeah.
Pat,
Thank you so much, Pat.
I want to ask
Yeah.
a question. I hate to keep bringing up special session, but the other thing I had heard is that potentially it would be a special session to address a whole host of issues, but not Medicaid expansion. And I wondered if this was one of those sorts of issues.
I have not heard that it is going to be heard in a special session. They have so many special sessions that people are interested in, getting in front of the governor and putting together the special session. This one, I'm not sure if it's going to be heard in a special session. I don't know. Some people may have other takes on that, but I have not heard that. Maybe somebody else knows, but
Yeah, I think we'll find out soon for sure. Okay, thank you so much, Pat. This was a very concerning number of bills, and I'm glad that none of them have passed yet. Though, yeah, as you say, we should be keeping an eye on that for next year's session. Alrighty, so wrapping us up on the updates is going to be Donna, who's going to give us an update on voting rights legislation. And that's going to kind of lead us into our very quick action call, a live 5 for Democracy, if you will. So Donna, take it away.
We're going to talk about voter protection and what happened in Missouri. Next slide, please. So you can see that I want to tell you that this truly is a national coordinated effort to challenge the integrity of our elections. We had a total of 368 new voter suppression bills introduced in 48 of the 50 states. Only, thank goodness, only 22 laws were passed in 14 states, but this is something that's going on across the nation. And here in Missouri, we had 30 voter suppression bills filed. Now, we followed these bills both in person testimony and written testimony. And these are the ones that we testified before the committees in both the House and the Senate. And we attended a March 31st lobbying day that was concerned with voter suppression. And we sent out action alerts to the Voter Protection Committee and the legislative bulletin that you all should receive. Follow this weekly. So next slide, please. So these are the primary bills that we opposed, and they were all wanting to add strict voter ID requirements, which we all know always affects low-income voters, disabled voters, voters of color, young that are moving frequently, and students. And they not only wanted to have it to be a photo ID that was current with your current address, only those issued by the state or the military. And then they said, and the Secretary of State, we can change the rules, but the Secretary of State doesn't have to inform the voters. So, that's really smart. And anyway, there was one that kind of put a little carrot. There were a couple of bills listed here as House Bill 1065 and Senate Bill 282 they put out a little carrot. They wanted to say that they would do no excuse absentee voting along with requiring the photo ID, but it was for only in-person voting, so it didn't include the elderly or the people that need to be mail-in voters that needed most. So we were very busy in through the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition and through the league. There was a lot of emails sent and phone calls made. We did support House Bill 324, which really just extended the federal requirement that all polls should have equipment accessible to voters with disability. That did get a hearing. I was able to watch that via Zoom, but it did not go anywhere. Next slide, please. So none of the bills we opposed or supported passed both bodies of the General Assembly. It was close, but the time ran out. But the threats and the concerns still remain because the chairman of the Missouri House Election and Election Official Committee, Dan Scholl, has asked Governor Parsons to call a special session to handle these election concerns. And they've also appointed an interim committee or task force that will workshop these bills so that they're ready for next year. Truly, the goal is to have these laws in place before the 2022 midterm elections and to suppress votes. So we'll see it again in January. We must really put pressure on our officials. And just know, though, that if any of these photo ID bills pass, the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition will challenge in court, along with help of groups like the League has done in the past, NAACP and A. Philip Randolph Institute and other groups have opposed this suppression with the help of the Advancement Project and the ACLU. So keep your ears tuned, because we'll need everyone. Not just the ones that have signed up for the Voter Protection Committee, but everyone in the league, because the voting is our thing and we need to protect it.
Right.
So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna. Alrighty, so on to the next slide. Please. Yes. So what we're gonna do for the next 5 minutes, I want to make sure that we leave enough time because I know the paid leave committee has things to do. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to call our US representatives, our congressmen, congresspeople, and our senators. And we are going to focus on the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and the infrastructure debate when we're calling them. Next slide. So, okay, so calling your representatives, super, super simple. The last time I was calling, I think I was making a salad. It's like the easiest thing. You just have to, the hardest thing, honestly, is just finding the number to call. And we're gonna provide those for you on the next slide. But so you dial the correct number. It's a Saturday, so most likely you're gonna get a voicemail, so you're not even gonna have to talk to anyone. Make sure that either when someone answers or you start leaving your message, you give your name and you give your zip code. Your zip code lets them know that you're a constituent who votes either for or against them. And then the third thing you do is you state your opinion. You say, I urge Congressman Cleaver to vote for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, for example. You're welcome to add reasoning if you want to, if you have reasons why you are passionate about them voting one way or another. But honestly, most of the time, they're just going to be listening to these and putting a tick in either the pro or the con column and passing that on to our elected officials so that they really know what the people think. So you really just have to say 2 sentences, your name and your zip code, and then I urge you to vote either for or against whatever, and then you hang up and you're done and you call the next one. So next slide.
Rachel,
Yeah.
All 3 of the bills you're talking about have passed the House. they all are hung up in the Senate.
Well, so I don't believe there's an infrastructure. Has the infrastructure bill passed the
Well,
House?
no, not the way, no.
Yeah.
The-
And I don't think the John Lewis Voting Rights Act has passed the House yet. That's going to come up this month, I think. So yeah, but definitely the For the People Act has passed the House. You're absolutely correct. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. Okay, you're gonna need if you don't have these numbers programmed into your phone, which all of us should, obviously, you'll need just a pen and a piece of paper to jot down. There should be 3 numbers there that are appropriate to you. Everyone has the same senators, and then hopefully you know who your US representative is. If you don't, I'm surprised, but you can Google that really quickly.
Is this in the website?
Sorry, what?
Is this in our website?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a place anyone, not just members, can look up their elected representatives on the website. There's links.
And ladies and gentlemen, the Reserve Voter Protection Coalition has a overall number that you call in, and they will give you the number for your senator, and then they'll keep track of how many calls that the senator got through that number, which is an interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I called that number this morning because I was gonna do that, but right now that number is it's like it will still connect you with your senator, but they're trying to encourage you to vote for something. There's like some other bill that they're pushing that you that you contact them about, which is like not an issue, but just might be a little bit confusing, which is the only reason that I didn't put that number in here.
Oh, okay, because that was what we were given Monday.
Yeah, I know.
But okay.
Weird that it was different. Okay, if everyone has written down these numbers, hopefully, go on to the next slide, please. So these are we're giving you examples of things that you can call about. Obviously, you can call about other things if you have other things that you want to call about, but we wanted to give you 3 different things that you can call and talk to your legislators about. So yeah, so S1 is the For the People Act that's in the Senate, because as Mary Lindsay said, it has passed the House, and now we're just trying to get it past the Senate. And wouldn't you know it, our senators would be fantastic people to convince to vote for it. And we've got some, talking points you can use if you want to. As I said, you can also just say, I would urge you to vote in favor of this bill. And that is completely fine. That is as much as you need to say. The second bill that we're covering is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And then the third one is infrastructure, which, as I'm sure you all know, if you've looked at the news at any time in the past 3 weeks, there is no consensus on what's going to go into an infrastructure bill. And so we just have some things that you could say in favor of getting a broad infrastructure package. And so I'm going to ask Sandy to leave this slide up so you can reference it. And I'm going to set my timer, and in 5 minutes, I want us to call all of our senators and representatives. So that's 3 phone calls. That's all you got to do. You're just going to be leaving a message. So put in the chat as soon as you've finished talking or leaving a message for one of those elected officials. And I'm starting my timer now. So we will be done with this at 11:09. All righty, get to it. Democracy in action. All right, awesome. So we have hit 11:09. I had to hop off of Zoom in order to use my phone to make the calls. I see a lot of people typing in the chat that they are done, left voicemails. Awesome. That is fantastic. Just like with us here, we like the number of contacts that our elected officials have got from us taking 5 minutes now to do this is impressively more than they probably would get on a normal Saturday morning. So I want to thank you all so much for doing this. The advocacy committee is going to be stepping back into gear pretty hard in August for sure, because that is when pre-filing starts for Missouri's next legislative session. And so all of the bills that you heard about today that we are worried about, you know, the voter suppression bills, the initiative petition bills, more education bills, all of the priorities that we voted on, those are going to be coming up again, and we are going to get ahead of them to start organizing our response to them now. Thank you all very much for taking part in this. I love how active this group is. It makes me really happy. And now I think we are going to hear from Judy Ansel and paid leave. Thank you so much. And thank you also to the members of the advocacy committee for helping put this together.
Make sure you come back.
What I'd like to do while Judy is getting it set up is remind you that our paid leave study committee is before you, and we're on our last step. And this process is where we bring the final findings to you, remind you what we told you in April and shared with you, and you participated roundly. What this process includes is, after Judy's presentation, is our 5 questions for consensus, where you ask for clarification, you ask questions, you disagree, whatever, and then we'll ask for concurrence so that we can have a position to support paid leave when it comes up in the public or private sector. So Judy, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Alice. And as you may recall, back in, I think it was June of 2020, the league empowered a group at Alice's initiative to study living wage ordinance for Kansas City. Unfortunately, we soon learned that the Missouri legislature had preempted cities from passing any kind of legislation that actually benefits working people. So count that one out. So we decided to switch to the issue of paid leave and probably look at a statewide kind of issue, making a statewide issue rather than simply something local. And particularly because COVID lockdowns had mounted, increased the number of lockdowns and layoffs of people. And we became increasingly aware of the disproportionate impact on women workers because many of them are so-called essential workers, and many of them were forced to quit jobs because children were at home and needed supervision. So we decided that we would study proposals for various forms of paid leave. We published a report in December and did a presentation to you in April, and now we're coming back to you for asking you to adopt a position on paid leave. We then plan to take the same presentation to other leagues, local leagues in Missouri, and get their assent as well. These are the members of the committee that did the study. And I want to thank all of them, and particularly thank Alice for her leadership on this. Some of you are on the call. So you may have to move the pictures of us talking, or in order to see all of this. But The need for paid leave, I'm lumping into two different categories. One is the need for paid sick leave for workers who get sick and need to take time off in order to get well. 24% of US civilian workers, that's 33.6 million people, do not have access to paid sick leave. And thus many people come to work sick because they can't afford to take off. And you will see that although the number of people with paid sick leave has increased somewhat in the last decade, it's still, not everybody. And the people who are least likely to have paid sick leave are the lowest paid workers. As you can see, the lowest 10% in terms of salary or wages had less than a little over 25%, probably about 30% only have paid sick leave, whereas high paid workers generally get paid sick leave. That's also true for paid family leave. And, note that there's a distinction. Sick leave is for the worker herself, but paid family leave is to be able to take time off for the illness of a relative, a child, or a close relative. And of course, we also lump into the idea of paid family leave the right to take off time when you have a baby or adopt a child. But in terms of paid leave, U.S. paid leave, to have workers to have access to paid family leave through work, we see the same pattern. Only far fewer workers have paid family leave than paid sick leave, but it's really minuscule among the lowest paid workers. But all workers, it appears, need to have paid family leave. As you would recall, the Family and Medical Leave Act that was passed back in the Clinton administration is unpaid and doesn't apply to a huge number of workers. The inequality of leave policies in this country really was exposed during the COVID epidemic. For example, women and people of color, people in the lowest socioeconomic status, are the most likely among all workers to hold frontline positions that require in-person work. These are the so-called heroes, you heard about so much in the last year. These groups have disproportionately experienced the negative health effects and economic consequences of COVID. And among them, women have been disproportionately affected. So you'll see, there, 4 times more women than men dropped out of the workforce during COVID. And this particular graph shows that as of March 1st, 2020, or since March 1st, 2020, the number of mothers and their status, particularly single mothers, who have dropped out of the workforce. It's a huge blow to the progress that women have made since basically the 1970s in order to, in terms of gaining access into the workforce and gaining, better pay and more equality. So, like COVID has really set us back. And in so many ways, it's a scandal. The U.S. is one of the, first off, the U.S. is one of the only, a few industrialized countries that don't have paid sick leave. Some countries, particularly in Europe, have very substantial paid sick leave and paid family leave. But the US, of course, is an outlier in so many benefits for workers. Each year, collectively, survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault miss 8 million paid days of work recovering from an attack, yet most of those people get no paid sick leave, no leave in order to do that. And individuals without paid sick days are 1.5 times more likely to report to work sick. And of course, that gets everybody else sick. And they're 5 times more likely to take a child or family member to the, less likely, I'm sorry. Wait a sec, I lost my place here. Twice as likely to send a sick child to school and 5 times more likely to take a child to the emergency room because they cannot take time off work to take the kid to the doctor. So, there are many things that happen as a result of the lack of paid leave, which affect our healthcare and our economic status that aren't calculated into, like the cost of missing a day's work, but it grows because of all of the collateral damage. So if we had paid sick and family leave, these 5 things would improve productivity of workers, profitability of companies, turnover would be reduced, worker morale would be increased, and worker health would be increased. All of these things would be gains for the economy, yet our legislatures don't see implementing laws to require paid sick leave or paid family leave as a priority. Yes, there's a bill in Congress, but as we've seen in so many of the bills in Biden's plans that he's introduced, they're running into blockades. And I personally think it's really unlikely that we will see a paid family and medical leave bill come out of Congress anytime during the Biden administration, unless there's some kind of miracle in the off-term elections. So basically there's a variation. One of the reasons why our group wanted to get more research was because there's various plans and we don't know what's best for Missouri and we don't know what the costs are. But there's variations in what's covered. Sick leave for employees earned by length of months worked. That's probably the most common thing. It's called earned sick leave, but also you could have family and medical leave covering a worker's sickness, sickness of close family members, leave for birth or adoption of a child, military leave, or leave because of domestic violence. All of those things have been talked about in terms of paid leave legislation. And then how it's paid for is also, up for grabs. Do we want to make employers pay for it only? Do we want to share the cost between employers and employees? Or do we want to have employees only pay for all of this? Or maybe we should just have a tax and the government taxes people and then pays for it as a benefit. Those are, sort of like unemployment insurance. Actually, unemployment insurance is not the government, it's the employer. But there are various ways of funding it. So all of these things need to be further studied, particularly for Missouri. That's why we wanted to do the research. But at this point, what we're wanting to do is get the leagues to vote for a position. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alice, and she can take it from there.
All right, thank you, Judy. And next we're going to go through the consensus questions, and Sandy will begin to pull them up. But let me say, first of all, this is what we're going to be discussing in the consensus process. We support paid leave for the health of workers and their families. Do recognize that we have not spelled out a particular model, the most generous model or the least generous model. We did that on purpose because if we lock into one model, then we're stuck and we can only advocate for that. So our position statement is consciously and deliberately general, and it gives us the opportunity to advocate at the public or private sector. And remember, private organizations provide employer benefits or don't, and so we can also work on both levels at all times if we agree on a position statement that was just given. Okay, Sandy.
Thanks, Alice. Now, one of the goals too, right, Alice, we're trying to get this as a state position.
Yes.
So we're checking a box here by doing this today, not only by getting consensus here locally, but also allowing us to make this a stronger, more broad state position. So given the findings that Judy so nicely presented, we're asking you to look at these questions for our consensus discussion. And the first one is, because most states, including Missouri, do not have a paid leave policy, do you agree it is important to establish a league position so the organization can advocate for paid leave? Number two, because of the importance of allowing workers to stay home when they or their family members are ill, To avoid spreading disease, do you believe it is important for employers to do their part in keeping society at large safe from the spread of illness? Number 3, the League study found an unequal impact on hourly workers, fast food workers, home care workers, contract workers, and a disproportionate impact on Black and brown people and women. Is this acceptable public policy? Number 4, small business owners say they cannot make a profit with paid leave. Is that proven out in the research? And number 5, the League study found that 80% of workers making more than $65,000 or more per year have access to paid leave, whereas fewer than a third of workers who make less than $19,000 a year have access to paid leave. Does this create equality of opportunity?
So now I'll ask for clarification comments from those of you on the Zoom. And if you would raise your hands, and Cindy, will you help me identify people who have clarification questions or comments? Disagreements?
I think it's important that we get this position in place. It's just like the TIF study, all this stuff has been going on for a long time, but we didn't have a position, so the League couldn't say anything about it. As individuals we could, but as an organization we couldn't. So I think this is an important first step in bringing both the League and this issue into the 21st century.
Thank you, Cheryl.
The statement about making more than $65,000 a year or more, you only need one more.
Got it. That occurs twice in this writing.
Question, Evelyn?
Let's see. Oh, thank you, Alice. It's the question having to do with small employers. I don't know if you're open to changing a question or tweaking it. I think the question says, I can't read it right now, but is this proven out in the research? I really believe the question ought to be, should the needs of small employers be considered? You know, rather than that, because it's a different thing with small employers, having worked with them many times. And I think it's just mainly, should the needs or concerns of small business owners be considered?
Judy, you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about small business is that obviously they do need to be considered, and that's fine, Evelyn. But you know, like I disagree with this the whole proposal of number 4, because I think it's false. And I think it's false because once you enact something, it's like the minimum wage. Once you enact something across the board, then everybody has the same costs. And so it's not like one is going to be able to undercut the other by denying sick leave. They're all going to have to provide sick leave. And so it won't give any one small employer or any employer an advantage over the other because they'll all have the same costs. It's just, as I say, it's the same thing as when you raise the minimum wage. You know, small employers always scream about, you know, not being able to afford the increased minimum wage, but in fact, studies have shown that they make up for it either by raising prices, or they make up for it by finding efficiencies, or the fact that they have less turnover because they have happier employees. And so it gets covered. And so the idea that they will be really disproportionately impacted, I think, is a false idea.
Now, I think, that's what you think. So is the question, is that proven out in the research, means the study will establish whether that's a fact or not?
Not that I'm aware of. That was not one of the questions of the study that we proposed. The fact is, I don't think there's enough experience. Maybe you could look at like Washington, Seattle, or something like that, that implemented paid leave, or Colorado after a few years. But it's very hard to do that. All I'm saying is I'm drawing a parallel with the minimum wage, where studies have in fact shown that that's not the case.
I guess I'm confused about how this question relates to the consensus process for the league. Since a consensus
I think
question
it's a ringer.
to the establishment of a position, in what way does this contribute to the establishment of a position?
Evelyn, it contributes by raising a con argument so that people can bat it around. We need to present questions that help you look at both sides, and that was the intent of that question.
But that should be played out in the study then also. But that's enough discussion for the moment. Thank you, Alex.
Let's go, Pat Goodman.
Thank you. Actually, my question was the same as Evelyn's. I'm not sure what, if I'm answering, is that proven out in the research? My answer would have to be, I don't know. So I'm not sure, again, how the question is helpful to establishing a consensus position.
Okay. And Donna Hope?
Well, that hit my button too, because it's like, was that presented in April? That what it research proved with small businesses? We know that definitely is, going to be brought up as to oppose this, because it's going to affect the small business owner and all. But Judy made a good point of if everyone has to do it, then it kind of levels the playing field. But I think it's hard to answer although we don't vote, we just kind of have a general, consensus of it. But that is, yeah.
Thank you. And Pat, go ahead, Sandy.
Stacy Webb, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I did. And I was having the same issue with number 4, but I did want to say on with the analogy of the minimum wage, it is different. This isn't a cost as much for small businesses. This is about coverage. And if you only have 3 employees, covering a 4th employee, which is 25%, makes it more difficult. Just putting that out there, that the analogy doesn't quite bear out.
One thing that occurs to me, and I'll go back to your point, Judy, about the benefits, the turnover, the other listing you had there, is maybe the question you posed here is something like, do the benefits outweigh the cost? Do the benefits offset the additional cost? Or, I'm trying to set it up so that you have a challenge about resistance with a response on the upsides.
I can tell you, because the turnover, the decreasing the turnover of having to train new employees is a big cost saving, and employees are more likely to stay if they have paid leave, sick leave benefits. My own sister, who ran a small business, found that by offering sick leave, they did slow down their turnover rate in a dry cleaner business, which employed, it's not the high end, big salary place.
Thank you. And Mary Lindsay?
That one got my attention too. And when I read it, a few days ago, I thought, oh my, because I'd read the material that you all, had sent with this. And I thought, how did I miss? I assumed my inference in reading number 4 was that, that it meant that it didn't harm small business owners. And I was having a hard time imagining how that would be true. I mean, I've known businesses where there were like, 3 employees, and if one is out, but it really takes 3 to keep things going. I mean, it would be, I can't see how that would be proven out well. in research. But, you know, but I'm interested in it, and surely there would have to be provisions of some sort made for really small businesses or ones that operate on a fine margin. Anyway, just.
Well, I do want to remind everybody that the position statement doesn't have to do with the mechanics of how it's implemented. It's just a general concept. So it looks like Pat Goodwin and Daisy still have your hands up. And Judy?
Oh, sorry, I just didn't put it down. Thanks.
Same, for me, I just didn't put my hand down.
Okay, Judy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Cheryl Barnes pointed out to me in the chat, and I wish she'd sent it to everybody, said, the issue is taking care of employees, not employers. Employers are well taken care of already. And I think that's really true, is that whenever we talk about these reforms for workers, it's like the discussion always shifts automatically to, oh, poor employers, they're going to get run out of business. And what about the poor workers who have been dying? And you know, like, I really think that, you know, it's really important for the league to state that, and to say that the priorities in this society have really ignored working people, and that we really need to bring more attention to them. Aside from that, you know, we don't know the answer to that question because the study hasn't been done. But in fact, many proposals for paid leave in various states and cities have exempted the smallest employers, just as the Family Medical Leave Act exempts a whole ton of employers from it, even though it's not even paid. So there are ways you fine tune these things because they get lobbied by various employer organizations, particularly the Chamber of Commerce. And so, you know, like, are we going to be, you know, like, most concerned about that, or are we going to be most concerned about the working people who are clearly the majority and clearly need some help? That's all.
Okay, Carol Hunt. Carol Hunt, did you have your hand up? I'm not hearing Carol. Did you have
Must
something?
be mute, Carol.
She's not.
Okay. And Pat, did you, Goodwin?
You're still mute, Pat.
Hello,
Pat? I'm unmuted now, sorry. I think, Judy, you said that in answer to the question in number 4, the study hasn't been done. So is the question, should we look for, or should we encourage studies in how paid leave would affect small business owners? And maybe talk about the small business owners who have, you know, fewer than a dozen employees or something, because that would be it would probably affect them more than a small business owner with, you know, 3 or 4 dozen employees.
Can I just answer that, Alice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our research proposal, which is yet to be funded, our research and proposal, you know, wanted to look at the pros and cons of, you know, various permutations of leave plans. And so we had hoped that we would get that kind of data, but we haven't been able to do it yet. So yes, we would definitely encourage research.
Would that make this question then, should further research be done to allay these fears or these concerns?
Yes.
I don't think that's
And
necessary.
that calls for some action here, which sounds to me like would get then support for the people asking the question here.
All right, we have maybe 2 more questions, and I see Carol Hunt's hand is up.
Yeah, I'm back. I was just about to say the same thing. You don't ask a question. There's an old saying, you don't ask a question unless you know the answer. So if you say, is it proven out by research? I think you've gotta have the research. That's all.
Okay, and Donna Hogue, and that will help to move us along to ending the questions and answers and clarifications.
Yes,
Donna?
I think we have to, Judy again made an excellent point. I have to think we look through our DEI lens, who, you know, the wealthy versus the poor, the employer, and how we've just seen that it affects minorities so much. So we do need to really put that lens on when we're looking at this and support. The league supports equality, equity, you know, and such. And in this position, we need to consider that.
Thank you, Donna, and all of you for the vigorous conversation and clarification questions. And do remember that in starting a business, you're supposed to have a good business model. And the good business model means that you take care of your employees and that they are the people that make you the profit. So you have to build that into the business model. So I always go back to questioning what kind of a business model exploits workers. But now we're ready for the consensus question. And the consensus question is the position, and I don't know if you can bring it back up again, Sandy, but we support paid leave for the health of workers and their families. Can I see a show of hands or nod that support for the statement, which I think is higher up on the slide? No, it's we support paid leave for the health of workers and their families. That's the concept and the position statement that we're taking as a league. So hands up. Is somebody taking note of the hands and whose hands are up? Can't tell. Any, okay. Cindy, Sandy, are you seeing any?
Sandy, can you unshare your screen so I can see everybody? Thanks.
Okay. All right. I think we have a consensus. Thank you all very much. We're grateful.
Let's see here. What other business do we have? I think we're actually done.
Of course, I'd like to say one more thing when we were doing our advocacy, that when Reva talked about the issue on assembly, Senate Bill 66, you know, that just hits a button of mine because they're really trying to make it a felony, which would keep people from voting. You know, so these things have different consequences on assembly to protest and then get arrested, and then it becomes a felony, so you can't vote, and you take away your not only freedom of speech but long-term voting. That's a hot button issue with me, guys, so just share it.
May I also comment what a wonderful meeting this has been. I hope everybody gives the whole meeting a thumbs up, right? Very informative. Thank you.
So yeah, this is Mary, and I thought the advocacy team, I really applaud all of their work and all of the work to try to influence our legislators and senators.
I'd just like to add something about the advocacy committee. This is new for all of us, I think, at least for me. I'm on a huge learning curve, and to try to figure out when is the best time to contact, you know, your representatives. You can also contact committee members. It's important for us to know where these bills go, what committee they're under, and you can contact the committee members no matter who they represent, because they represent the whole state. And supposedly, when they have these hearings, they are supposed to bring up communications they've had from their constituents about yay or nay. Whether they do that, I don't know, but that is part of the process. It goes through a huge process. You can go on to missouri.gov to find out how a bill becomes law. But it goes back and forth a lot. It's perfected at some point then it moves on. But it's a long process, and so the big question is when during that process is the best time to contact these people is my big question.
Well,
Besides the advocacy committee, I'd like to thank Pauline for putting this together as our program chair. We gave her very sketchy instructions at the board, and she took the ball and ran for a touchdown.
And one last thing, we are doing this as individuals and except on certain things that the president may speak for us, but we are volunteers working, so it doesn't affect our 501c3 status.
Clarification. Any other announcements? Dolores?
Don't forget that some of the legislators are having town hall meetings. In fact, there's one, a Zoom one on this coming Monday with the South Kansas City representatives and in both houses that'll be held by, sponsored by the South Kansas City Alliance. So there will be more of these. Please, please, please plug into these things. And by the way, all the bills are generally filed in December the 1st, and that's where you start watching.
Thanks, Dolores. Any other announcements or questions or comments? Well, I'll be sitting on the sidelines next time, I think.
You know what they say, send me in, coach.
Of course.
Thank you all.
Are we adjourned?
We are adjourned.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Bye, everyone.